So if you've been doing research into the multifamily space, you've probably heard of the term value-add multifamily. Now, at its crux, essentially what this means is, as an investor, we're gonna find a piece of property that can somehow be improved, right? Where we can make some sort of improvements and increase rents and thus cash flows and overall value of the building by doing so. So what I thought I would do in this video is actually break down some of the ways you can force the appreciation in a multifamily asset, right? So we'll talk about specific strategies that us investors can take in terms of doing improvements, whether physical or not, to improve the properties and the cash flows and financials associated with it. So with that, let's get at it. What's going on, guys? My name is Lior and I'm a multifamily investor here out of Boston, Massachusetts, and welcome back to my channel. Now, real quick, if this is your first time, make sure you subscribe to my channel. I'm doing tons of new videos, literally on a daily basis now, talking about everything multifamily. So literally syndication, raising funds, operations, construction, financials, and everything in between. So if that's what you're interested in, learning all about multifamily, make sure you subscribe. So with that, let's get right into it. And as I said, I'm gonna lay out the couple different strategies of what us as investors can do to force appreciation of a multifamily asset. Now, at its core, right, this means we're gonna impact the net operating income, right? Because again, if the value of an asset is tied to an NOI, right, the net operating income, you have to increase the net operating income. And typically you can do that through two ways. You can either increase your revenues or decrease expenses. Now, decreasing expenses is certainly a possibility, but I've kind of found that to be a pretty challenging endeavor, right? Because, it's hard to say as an investor, like, hey, this previous investor was just, his expense ratios were not great or he was mismanaging, and I'm gonna absolutely just truncate the expenses, right? And, is it possible? Yes. I just think that it's a difficult strategy to really execute on. Plus, it's hard to make the assumption that you're gonna be a much better operator in terms of the expense side versus the next guy, right? You kind of assume you're just gonna be kind of like on an average, you're gonna incur average expenses and you're gonna deal with them in an average manner, right? We don't wanna be like the stock picking genius or something here, that we have some secret formula. At the end of the day, we're gonna incur the expenses that we're gonna incur, and that's really it. So we're gonna focus on the revenue side of the NOI, right? In order to increase it. And with that, there's a couple of different strategies that we can do. First, and probably most obvious, and easiest to understand is, hey, let's go do direct physical improvements to the interiors of the units, right? So that can mean things like upgrading or gutting kitchens, baths, sanding floors, repainting walls, making nicer electrical fixtures, and anything basically interior cosmetics, right? So the point of this is you're gonna make the unit look a lot nicer, much more modern, new, and you can basically charge higher rents because of that. Now, the second thing you can do to actually increase revenues is potentially change layouts. And this is actually a pretty common strategy, especially in the Boston area, where we kind of have a lot of old layouts that tend to be kitchens, bedrooms, and then living and dining rooms. Now, a really popular strategy that a lot of investors implement here in the Boston area is they actually convert a dining room into another bedroom. Now, there needs to be a proper layout, right, where you don't go from one bedroom to the other. There obviously needs to be things like proper windows, right, because bedrooms need to have proper windows through them. But if you have that right layout and the right building, it's actually very manageable to go in, convert a dining room into a bedroom, and you're essentially taking, let's say, a 2-bed, 1-bath or a 3-bed, 1-bath to a 3 or a 4. You can do the same thing with sunrooms, additional little nooks, right, depending on the exact layout. But again, you can find extra space that is maybe not functional or not necessarily generating revenue for you, and you can take that and create bedroom space to essentially increase your rents. The other way you can do this too is not necessarily on the bedroom side, but depending on the area, sometimes you might take a pantry or a small closet and convert it to another bathroom, right? Especially kind of in your higher end markets here. If you take a unit from a 2-bed, 1-bath to a 2-bed, 2-bath, in the right marketplace, in the right market, in the right sub-market here, that can really drive a very heavy rent increase and can really make the unit a lot more desirable. So there's just a lot of different little layout things that you can do to play with them to really make the unit more desirable and increase that top line revenue. Now, the next type of strategy you can do or implement is making improvements to the common space and exterior. So when I say this, you can do things like siding work, right? It could be replacing the siding, power washing the siding. I've done a lot of pavement work where you can repave driveways, just basically spruce up the exterior in any way possible, do some landscaping. Now, when you're gonna do this strategy, this definitely works really well, but you just have to be a little careful about how much money you're truly gonna spend, right? Because, you know, this will obviously increase the appeal of the property to tenants and obviously the community. But you don't want to overspend here, right? Because you want to add the proper amount of love into it, but you don't want to overspend because at some point you might not necessarily get the same return for your dollar. And finally, the last strategy that we implement here is marketing and proper lease up, right? So a lot of the times units are just simply not marketed correctly. I've seen units that are just fantastic units, but have just really crappy pictures. Brokers don't respond. Property management is not responsive, right? So if you can have a system where you know how to quickly come in, properly market units, take great pictures, you know how to advertise them in what channels, depending on the sub-market, can really improve efficiencies in your marketing and operations. That's certainly another way you can add value to the property. And again, be able to increase rents, decrease vacancy. It's just another great way to drive top line revenue. So those are some of my strategies that I implement. Hopefully that makes sense, guys. If you guys have any questions, make sure you shoot them in the comments below.